Chapter 3 The Catalyst. Bailey House, the Albin Farm, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, 3 days later. Midnight, Monday, December 28th, 1722. As the calendar winds down and his family prepares to turn the page, Senior spends his last days of the year reflecting on his daughters. Reminders of them from the day they were born to the day they left the nest surround him in Bailey House. Mary II Kansi and her sister, Margaret Hunter, both passed away just 2 short years ago. In the fall of 1720, Margaret was struck by a carriage near her home in Pennsylvania. Battered and broken, she held on for 2 agonizing days before succumbing to her wounds. Captain Hunter and their children were at her side until the angels carried her home. Thereafter, her widowed husband and all but 2 of their children continued to live and thrive in Pennsylvania. Sadly, just 2 days later, at her home in Queensboro, Mary II joined her sister in heaven. On that faithful day, her husband Anthony found her peacefully sleeping, never to awaken again. Her untimely death left him to raise their 3 children alone. Since the sisters' passing, only 8 Albins remained living, all in Ireland. Family patriarch James Sr., his sons James Jr. and Robert John, and R.J.'s family, Sarah, William, James III, Elizabeth, and Little John. This particular day, December 28th, also marks the 57th anniversary of the tragic loss of James Sr. and Anne Margaret's first child, Sarah. Tragically, she is the very child who inspired them to leave the Shire for Ireland and start anew. Despite those mile markers, it had been a pretty good day. In between daydreams, Senior tended to the horses and kept William company while he chopped wood, which for Senior is a full day. Exhausted, he had dozed off in his chair after supper. Adjusting himself, his eyes slowly opened to the quiet crackle of the fire. Glancing around, he sees he is alone. Rising to his feet, he slowly crosses the room and ascends to his 4th-floor suite. After tossing a few logs on the fire, he plops his weary body on the edge of his bed. Gazing at the hypnotic flames, he sighs, catching his breath. The stones of the old fireplace lightly glowing behind the flames. On the verge of slumber, the crackling fire conjures memories of his beloved Anne, and his jolly bearded face melts into a grateful smile. For although his memories of baby Sarah always made him a little melancholy, reminiscing about his blonde-haired beauty always put that smile back on his face. And so it is, as he stares into the flickering abyss, Senior's eyes slowly close. Bailey House, the Albin Farm, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, just 2 hours later, 2 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday, December 29th, 1722. Nearby in the foreman's cottage, James Jr. tosses and turns, restlessly sleeping, while the rest of the family are peacefully nestled into their comfy Bailey House beds. In the house, there was a warmth, darkness, and a soft quiet. The only sound that of an occasional crackle from one of the house's many fireplaces. William, whose room is closest to the stairway, is wrapped in blankets in a deep, blissful sleep. At the other end of the floor, away from the stairs, Lizzie and her golden locks sleep soundly in her room, her pimple-faced brother, James III, out cold in the room next door. Back at the other end of the hall, random noises disrupt William's dreams, but not enough to wake him. Although the noises persist, he rolls over and snuggles into his pillow. Moments later, the heavy aroma of smoke begins to waft. William's subconscious mind becomes restless, and he slowly begins tossing and turning. A muffled crash comes from one of the upper floors. William sits up, swinging his warm feet from the blankets and onto the cold wooden floor. Breathing heavily, he gathers himself, listening. Alertly, he notes the heavier smell of smoke. Leaping to his feet, he races into the hallway. Looking up and down the hall, there is no sign of fire, until he spots wisps of smoke lofting down the stairwell. Moving on to the landing, the terrorizing sound of crackling flames is heard from the floors above. Dashing up the stairs, he looks the devil in the eyes when a massive crash brings a wall of flames bursting onto the third-floor landing and down the stairs, leaving the top of the stairwell fully engulfed. He starts up the stairs again to alert his family, but another explosion rocks the house, knocking him off his feet. The blaze is intensifying now, roaring louder, casting its inferno down on William's half-naked body, singeing his skin. If he can get to the fourth floor, he can alert his family to the fire, and if he is lucky, save his grandfather. Just then, a fire blossom cascades down the stairwell, forcing William to retreat. Back on the second-floor landing, he gazes wide-eyed in horror as the flames roll across the walls and ceiling like a wave. Knowing all he can do is shout, he fills his lungs and screams with all that he is. "Fire! Fire! Wake up! The house is on fire! Ma! Da! Grandpa! Fire!" Shouting down the hall, he screams, "James! Lizzie! Wake up! The house is on fire!" Despite his efforts, the only response comes from the spirit of the flames as they race through the massive structure, exploding beams and laying waste to everything in sight. Just then, his siblings stumble into the hallway on their knees in a panic, coughing and hacking. Wide-eyed, William shouts, "The house is on fire! We need to get out!" Still coughing, James III looks up to see his first glimpse of the devastation, muttering, "Have mercy!" Flames flare down the wall from the ceiling behind them, catching Lizzie's gown on fire, and she screams. William rips the blazing garment from her body and pulls her away, as James III watches in horror. Wrapping her in his sleep shirt, William shouts, "We need to get out of here! Go! Now! Get out!" As William guides his siblings out of the inferno, his brother shouts, "But Ma and Da!" "Hey, Grandpa!" Lizzie shouts, yanking her arm away from William's grip. Surrounded by the fire, he shouts, "I know, but—" Turning his eyes to the stairwell, he stares into the flames, then looks back at them and shouts, "The upper floors are gone! There's nothing we could do!" James III cries, "But we can still—" Flames flare up on the ceiling above them, and Lizzie screams again. Needing to get out of there, William grabs them both and shoves them down the stairs while the path is still clear. As they start down the stairs, William is knocked to his knees from behind as several massive beams crash through the ceiling, casting their fiery wake across the second floor. The beast is wild and violent, setting anything flammable ablaze. As burning debris rains down from above, William gets to his feet and staggers down the stairs. Coughing through the thickening smoke, he finds his siblings halfway down, their eyes fixed upward, waiting to see if their brother will make it out. Infuriated to see them still standing there, he flies down the stairs at them, shouting, "Go! Go! There's nothing we could do! Run! Get out before it collapses!" The youngsters hesitate, but William is on top of them quickly, shoving them down the stairs, shouting, "Go! Keep going! Go! Go!" Nearly to the exit, William has an epiphany. Little John. Pushing his siblings out the door to safety, he whirls around and bolts back up the stairs. Back on the second floor, he dashes into Little John's room. The bed is empty, and Little John is nowhere in sight. Then it hits him. The bed is not just empty, it had not been slept in. The reality of which rocks him to his core, but with most of the structure now fully ablaze, he reluctantly makes his way back down the stairs. Meanwhile, next door, The roar of the blaze has finally shaken James Jr. from his slumber. Startled, he shoots upright, spinning around until his feet hit the floor. Calm and still, he rolls his eyes around, as if he can see through the cottage walls. Sitting there, he struggles to put a finger on what it is. Then a loud bang explodes outside, and he jumps to his feet. Something is amiss. Bolting from his cottage, he is godsmacked by the heat, smoke, and flames wafting from Bailey House. The temperature so intense he is forced to shield his face with his hands. Stunned, he pauses for a moment and makes an appeal to the heavens. "I pray, Lord, send your angels." Snapping from his daze, he breaks into a sprint, running to the front of the massive tower. As he comes around the corner, there is nobody there, only an empty, fully illuminated barnyard. As he rushes towards the front door, Lizzie and James come stumbling from inside, hacking and coughing. He scans the grounds for anyone else, but there is no one there. Putting his arms around the young ones, he guides them away from the house. When they stop, James Jr. yells, "Where is everyone?" Still hacking, they point at Bailey House. As James Jr. slowly looks up, William emerges through the smoke billowing from the front door. He is bent over at the knees, coughing. Concerned, he looks around for his siblings. To his relief, he spots them huddled with their uncle. He shouts, "Where's John?" James III looks up at the flames violently dancing through the stone window openings on the 5th floor and sobs, "With mine, da!" As William's eyes turn to the window, his mouth falls open, but no words come out. In the cold night air, the 4 surviving Albins stand half-naked and shocked, silently gaping at the blazing devastation. The flames reflecting in their eyes, like a nightmare from which they cannot awaken. They are numb, oblivious to the heat pressing against their skin. As they look on, a mighty collapse implodes the massive structure between the stone walls, hurling a firestorm into the sky, illuminating the night. As they watch in horror, the huge beams within explode, pop, and crackle, while the glow of the flames rises and falls as burning debris cascades to the ground in every direction. Breaking the silence, James Jr. asks, "Is anyone hurt?" But his words fall on deaf ears as the children silently stare at the fire. He asks, "Do any of you know what happened? How it started?" With their eyes still fixed on the flames, they shake their heads stone-faced. James Jr. turns to the blaze and swallows hard. The house is fully engulfed, flames and smoke billowing from the window openings in the stone walls and rooftop. And as difficult and heart-wrenching as it is, he concludes there is nothing more anyone can do. The fate of Bailey House and those trapped inside had already been sealed. Desperation in his voice, William cries, "I tried, but we're all ablaze, and I—" Just then, a roaring thunder erupts in the center of the structure as what remains of the upper floors comes crashing down, and the massive old house implodes in a blazing heap of destruction. Its heat cutting through the brisk night air, its flames bringing daytime into the night. "Children, there's nothing more we can do. Come!" James Jr. shouts as he whisks the children to his cottage. When they reach the side of Bailey House, they are brought to a halt by the sight of the old foreman's cottage fully ablaze, embers from the tower having lofted down, setting the thatch roof aflame. Thinking quickly, he shouts, "To the barn!" Following their uncle's lead, the children race into the barn onto piles of dry hay. Grabbing some horse blankets, their uncle wraps them about the children, but the fire is already putting out more heat than needed. Resting their heads on the hay, Elizabeth and James III weep uncontrollably, both no doubt in a deep state of shock. After tending to the children, James Jr. turns to the door where William is standing. He is staring at what remains of his lifelong home as it burns to the ground. Lashing out, William cries, "I can't just stand here!" And just like that, he bolts across the yard. "Shite!" James Jr. huffs before racing after him. About 2/3 of the way to the house, he catches him, tackling William to the ground. "Get off me! What are you doing?" Holding him down, "We've lost enough already. I'll not lose you as well." William stops struggling. His face awash with tears, he peers up at the blaze. "No!" From atop his back, "I know it hurts, but there's nothing we could do." Hopelessly, William sobs, "But they... In a calm, compassionate tenor, James Jr. whispers, "They're gone, lad. I'm sorry. So very sorry." William lowers his head to the cold ground, steam from his nostrils shooting like an angry bull as he weeps. Behind him, James Jr. pushes to his feet, then helps his nephew up. Side by side, they stand in the glow of their once beloved home. Like it, they too are broken. Bailey House, the Albin Farm, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, 4 hours later, just past 6 in the morning, Tuesday, December 29th, 1722. All that remains of Bailey House is the stone shell of its outer walls. Its once mighty timbers, beams, and floorboards now lay in a smoldering heap in the center of the shell. James Jr. and William are still in shock, standing in the middle of the barnyard, staring in disbelief when a group of farm laborers come walking up, each bearing expressions of shock and disbelief. One of them, who has been with the farm for decades, slowly walks over and gently places a hand on James Jr.'s shoulder. Startled, James Jr. gasps, "Bloody hell!" Humbly, his employee sighs, "Apologies, Master James. I didn't mean to startle you. We just wanted to see if there were anything we could do." Looking back at the smoldering remains, James Jr. silently shakes his head. The worker looks around for signs of the family, asking, "Did everyone get out before? Is everyone all right?" Aggressively spinning to face the man, James Jr. barks, "No, they didn't." Quickly coming to his senses, he murmurs, I'm sorry. But no, we are not all right." As the words fall upon him, the worker clenches his hat to his chest with his head bowed. As James Jr. continues, the man slowly raises his head, gazing at what remains of Bailey House. "It's gone. They're all gone," James Jr. whispers through weeping eyes. "Condolences, Master James. We're all so very sorry for your loss. You and your loved ones will be in our prayers," the worker says before turning to the others. While the workers can see their jobs have likely gone up in smoke, the true cause of their pain is the loss of Senior and his family. The Albins have been beloved members of their community for decades. Hence, their passing will be felt by many. As word of the fire spreads, people from the village begin showing up in droves, each eager to help in any way they can. But upon seeing the devastation, they realize all they can do is offer their condolences. A few hours later, a group of them help comb through the smoldering remains with hopes of recovering the family's loved ones. Prior to the fire, any thought of the family falling victim to such a catastrophe never crossed any of their minds, and James Jr. had never even considered such a notion. As a tailor, his thoughts had been consumed with helping his family around the farm in between making dresses and fashioning suits. And yet, here he is, searching through the smoldering debris, his mind in a place previously unexplored, cold, dark, and disoriented. Aside from the heat pressing through his boots, he is numb, but retrieve his loved ones he must. Snapping from his daze, something in the char catches his attention. He stares at it for a moment, then moves closer to investigate. Tiptoeing through the ash, it begins to come into focus. When it finally registers, his gut wrenches. It is the charred remains of a delicate hand peeking through the debris. The crushing weight of helpless despair falls upon his spirit, paralyzing him. But then an unexplained feeling of gratitude washes over him, and he wipes away his tears. For on one of the blackened fingers rests something small and shiny, the family heirloom. He chokes up, nearly breaking into a full-on cry. Then, sucking a deep breath through his nose, he gathers himself, maintaining his composure. He looks to his left and right, then ever so carefully pushes aside the debris, uncovering his beloved sister-in-law. As a tear breaks through his defenses, he wipes it away, whispering, "I'm so sorry, sir." Reaching down, he carefully removes the precious heirloom from her lifeless finger. Holding it against his heart, he wipes it on his shirt. With most of the soot removed, the tiny gold ring shines at him, as if thanking him for saving it. He lets his eyes give a hint of a smile, then slips it into his pocket. One by one, each of their dearly departed are recovered from the debris. Standing in the barnyard, James Jr. silently stares at the foreground. There, his 4 loved ones lay side by side, wrapped in linens. In the background, the still smoldering remains of Bailey House. Overwhelmed, he numbly scans the area. As he stands there, wondering what caused this, it occurs to him. He had been staring at it the whole time, but until now it had failed to register. Now, however, it is as clear as the nose on his face. What he sees is that although the outer walls remain standing, one of Bailey House's chimneys is missing. The fireplace and chimney where his father's 4th-floor room once stood are both gone, while the chimneys on the opposite wall on the 3rd and 4th floor remain intact. He now knows how the fire started and how it spread so quickly. The chimney of the overly used fireplace in his father's room had exploded like a firebomb, casting a cascade of burning debris in every direction. That is when the reality sets in. Anyone above the 3rd floor never had a chance. The Albin Farm, a tiny hill overlooking Bailey House, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, 2 days later, Thursday morning, December 31st, 1722. Due to the horrific nature in which they perished, and the unspeakable conditions in which they were found, the 4 Albins are quickly laid to rest. And although only 4 Albins survived the blaze, more than 100 friends and neighbors have come to pay their respects. Together, they make the short trek up the hill to where the farm can be seen in every direction, to a special place where Arthur Bailey and his family and beloved Albin family members have been laid to rest for decades. 13 souls together forever in the sacred ground. As they carry the caskets up the hill, the large group of mourners follows behind, trailed by bagpipes weeping "Floors of the Forest." After the ceremony, James Jr. stands alone on the hill overlooking the graves. With a twist of his neck, he straightens himself, chest out, chin up, and with a look of determination he whispers, "I will no let you down. You have my word." The Brosnan Farm, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, 3 mornings later, Sunday, January 3rd, 1723. Like James Sr., Robert John had successfully passed the bloodline to a new generation. However, with their untimely passing, the responsibility of lifting what remains of that bloodline out of the ashes is now in the hands of the family's unmarried 52-year-old Taylor, with the fate of the family's name resting in the hands of the only 2 remaining males, James III and his older brother, William Bruce. Since the fire, James Jr. and the children have been staying with their neighbors and dear friends, Jack and Betty Brosnan, and their large family of children and grandchildren. Fortunately, the children have lived their entire lives with Uncle James on the family farm, and their bonds are strong. And now that they are alone, they are bound more tightly than ever. With the funerals behind them, James Jr. is ready to move forward and knows what he must do. With the house a complete loss, he needs to send word to the colonies. The executor of Senior's estate, Captain Jonathan Jacob Hunter, must be informed of the recent events. Although Captain Hunter was widowed with Margaret's passing, Senior had asked him to continue to serve as his executor. Before heading to town, James Jr. pulls William aside. "Your brother and sister are still sleeping, but Jack and I must go. We'll be getting a room in Dublin tonight, and we should be back by supper tomorrow. In the morn, I'll send me message to Captain Hunter, and after that, we'll be coming home straight away. Until then, I need you to keep a watchful eye on Lizzie and James. Can you do that?" William nods. "Not to worry, Uncle James. We'll be fine. I'll keep the three of us busy helping Miss Betty with her chores while you're away." With a hand to his nephew's shoulder, he says, "That's a good lad." He gives William a wink and turns for the door. As Mr. Brosnan follows him out the door, he bays, "See you at supper tomorrow, love." "You'd better. I'll come looking," Betty shouts. The Brosnan Farm, Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland, 6.5 months later. An early summer evening, Wednesday, July 21st, 1723. The Brosnans and Albins are sitting outside the house cooling themselves in the evening air when a rider approaches from the south. Riding up to the yard, he hollers, "Might there be a Mr. James Albin, Jr. among ye?" Junior stands and waves. "Aye, here I be. I've a letter from the colonies for you, sir," the rider says, reaching out his hand. James Jr. hurries over and takes the letter, handing the courier a few shillings. "Thank you, lad." As the messenger rides away with a wave, James Jr. opens the pouch. Pulling out a letter, he starts to read. In the letter, Captain Hunter instructs him to proceed with liquidating Senior's estate. Hunter then goes on to request that James Jr. and R.J.'s children escort his two youngest children to the colonies. It further states that 6 boarding passes have been included with his parcel. Departure from Dublin occurs in 3 weeks on August 11th, aboard the Lady Anne. The others watch as James Jr. drops his arms to his sides and declares, "'Tis time! We've much to do, and little time to do it." Meanwhile, Captain Hunter had also sent word to his best friend, Captain Anthony Wayne, who was caring for his 2 children in Rothdrum. In their younger years, the 2 captains had served in Holland together under General John Churchill. Churchill is the 7th great-grandfather of the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Sir Winston Churchill, and 8th great-grandfather of Diana, Princess of Wales. Later in their careers, Captain Wayne went on to command a troop of horsemen with Captain Hunter at his side. In November of 1688, after years of loyal service to King James II, General Churchill and the 2 captains pledged their loyalty to Prince William of Orange, James's successor, King William III. 2 years later, the captains fought together at the Siege of Cork, during which they defeated the forces of their former king. Later still, Hunter and Wayne went on to serve under Churchill yet again, when he was named the 1st Duke of Marlborough. After their service, both captains remained in Ireland. After settling into the town of Rothdrum in Wicklow County, they went on to become successful grazers. During that time, after several months of courtship, Captain Wayne married the lovely Miss Hannah Faulkner. Not to be outdone, Captain Hunter married Hannah's best friend, the lovely Margaret Albin, just a few months later in the fall of 1693. Many years later, the Hunters sold their ranch and relocated to the colonies. Unfortunately, The hunter's two youngest children were too young at the time to make the voyage. As such, they were taken in by the Waynes until such a time as they were old enough to travel. Sadly, Margaret would never see those children again. In the letter to Wayne, Hunter requests that arrangements be made for his children to be delivered to their Uncle James Jr. in Dublin on the 11th day of August to board the Lady Anne for the colonies. The Dublin Harbour, on a pier overlooking the Irish Sea. Dublin, Ireland, the crack of dawn. Wednesday, August 11th, 1723. After liquidating his father's assets, Junior and the children pack what little that remains of their meager belongings, load themselves into a wagon, and make the slow, bumpy 27-mile journey south to Dublin. When they arrive on the morning of their departure, Junior spies a man of nobility and stature standing near a small group of people at the end of the dock. It is Captain Wayne. With him are his wife Hannah Faulkner, 8 of their 9 children, and the hunter's 2 youngest children. Junior, William, and the 2 little ones approach and exchange hugs, hellos, and handshakes. To their surprise and delight, they learn the Waynes will be joining them on their voyage. Captain Wayne's 9th child, Isaac, is remaining in England to complete his education. He will rejoin the family in Pennsylvania in 2 years. After his arrival to the colonies, Isaac marries and fathers a son. His son, born in Easttown Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania, on New Year's Day, 1745, will go on to serve under General George Washington during the American Revolutionary War. And while Isaac calls his son Anthony, history goes on to call him General Mad Anthony Wayne, American war hero. Together, the Albins, Waynes, and Hunters board the ship. With the wind in her sails, they slip through the Irish Sea and across the Atlantic Ocean to the British colonies of North America. After living and thriving in Rogerstown, Meath County, Ireland for 3 generations, the last of the Albin clan bids their beloved home farewell.